All right, I think we're working. I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com. Welcome to another live video here on YouTube. I'm having some trouble today. I can't get my thumbnail to to show properly. I'm sure I can fix that later though. Anyway, I have just released chapter 7 of the Strangest Fluency Secret. So if you already have the book, you can log in and start reading it. And also, if you don't have the book yet, you can click on the link in the description below this video to get that and start reading it. Hello, nice to see you there, George. So what I want to talk about today, because what I've done with the book is write it backwards. So typically a book begins with, here's the idea, and then I'm just going to prove it or show how it works or something like that. But for me, for helping people get fluent, there are so many ideas that people have about how to learn, even though many of them are not becoming successful speakers, that first I had to deal with many of these things. And so the book is kind of done in a reverse order. And now chapter 7, now that that's finished, that really has everything. If you only read chapter 7, it will explain the whole idea about the book, and I can give you more information about that in this video. But what I wanted to talk about now that we have it released is really the most important idea, I think, of the book. There are quite a few of them, but this one is really the core and the whole reason I wrote the book. So what I want to talk about is kind of an interesting thing, but I often get questions or comments, or it could be on YouTube or emails or whatever, of learners asking me things like, after I start speaking, so pardon my sloppy handwriting here. So after I start speaking, I get kind of frustrated with the way I speak, so I have to translate in my head, or I have to get stuck. I don't have to get stuck, but I get stuck trying to remember words and phrases, or I forget things, or I can't recall exactly what I want to say. And an interesting thing that like for many years, actually, it took me a while to figure this out, but if you look at most of these things, there are 2 points that jump out at you. It took me a really long time to figure this out. But one of them is this idea here, is that after I start speaking, and the other idea is that often these comments, just like you'll see in comments on this video and other videos I've done, if you look at the comment section or during any live video, you can watch the live chat or go back and read that, you will see errors from people maybe mistaking things or writing things like they're not quite sure about how something works. Oh no, the camera is in reverse? Oh my goodness! I uploaded the YouTube app. Let me see here. And that's weird. Oh no! All right, I'm not even going to bother writing anything then, or I have to write it backwards. YouTube. I was thinking, maybe I should not upload or update the app because they're probably going to mess something up. And of course they do. But anyway, all right, we don't even have to write anything, I think, for this video, but hopefully for the next one, we should get this sorted out. But this is odd. I don't know what that does. I don't think there's a way to, is there a way to mirror this? I'm just looking at what the buttons and things are on here. I don't think, yeah, it's weird. Let me know if it's actually mirrored. I guess it is. Well, that's a pain. Anyway, so these 2 ideas, the first one is that the people writing comments typically have various grammar mistakes in those comments. So they're not quite sure or about how to say something, or maybe it sounds a little bit unnatural or whatever the case may be. And that they're also assuming that after they start speaking, they're having these issues. But most people don't realize that these issues are happening even before you speak. And this is a really important thing to remember because they're typically pre-speaking issues. And so if you think about the logic here, and this is exactly what I lay out in the book, but especially in chapter 7, most people don't actually expect that learning should help them speak. And it sounds kind of weird when you think about it like that, but most people, they think there's the learning phase of language acquisition, and then you practice speaking. That's what most people think is happening. But if learning isn't actually helping you speak, and that's mainly the reason people actually need speaking practice, because they're not feeling sure about their words beforehand. But again, you can really understand this and see it very clearly before you speak. So before there's any pressure from communication, before you have to worry about responding to other people, do you feel sure about using your words or not? So do you feel sure about, like I'm going to write something, or I'm just thinking, should I use this preposition or that preposition? Or is this phrasal verb correct, or is that phrasal verb correct, or whatever? So what most people think is happening is they're kind of ignoring or forgetting the errors and questions and things that happen to them before they speak. And so they're only really thinking about them after speaking begins, but those errors are actually happening before you say a word. And so this means that the kind of the frustrations that happen to people as they start speaking, these aren't really speaking problems. There certainly are things that happen in addition to that, like if you don't feel sure about what others are saying, you can't understand them, or you're not prepared because you just don't know the vocabulary, that's a different issue. But being unable to use your own words is something that should be fixed before you speak. And if that's not the case, then it's kind of a weird thing to think about where you would say something, for example, people might be thinking like, okay, I learned something in a class, but I don't really understand it very well. And then I want to go try to use that in a conversation, but I don't really feel sure about doing that either, but it's really the only place I can start practicing, because if I'm not getting sure about my words before I speak, then I have to become sure when I speak. That's the only thing, the only alternative, the only option you have. But if you think about it, like, let's say I wanted to learn how to write well, I should not need to learn how to speak well first in order to just be sure that my sentences are correct and that I don't feel unsure about saying particular things. So what the book ultimately gets to is that most people actually don't expect learning to help them speak. And so if you look at most lessons you've probably taken in your life, they give you information or they give you exposure or whatever. Maybe you're watching TV shows or taking classes. It doesn't really matter where you're getting the English from. But if you don't feel sure about using the language after you learn, then of course you have to find a way to do that after you speak. So hopefully this idea makes sense. It seems like a very simple idea, and it's the foundation of the book, and really hopefully it should make it clear why people don't actually have to do that, because it is possible to feel sure about your words before you speak. But if most people just accept that you don't have to feel sure, you kind of wonder, what is the purpose of learning? And so I thought about that when I was writing the book and thinking, like, even for me as a learner who struggled for 15 years to learn different languages, it never occurred to me, like, wait a minute, all this stuff that I'm doing to learn is not actually helping me speak. I don't learn something and then feel sure about using it. I learn something and then, for example, I would just think, okay, I have to now go out and try to use it or whatever I think is happening. But it's a really interesting problem until you realize that, oh, It's just something most people assume. This is learners and teachers, where here's information for you, but you don't actually have any guarantee that you're going to get it fixed. So you don't have any guarantee that you're going to feel sure about using your words after you learn them. And so most things, if you've ever watched a lesson, again, I'm repeating myself here because this is important, but if you've ever watched a lesson and then thought, I can't actually use what I just learned, then the lesson didn't provide you what it should have provided you. Now, granted, sometimes it might take multiple lessons or multiple examples of something for you to understand it, but in general, you should be feeling sure about your words before you speak. And lessons actually should be making you feel sure about using your words. Now, it's a pretty simple idea, and I can go into more detail about it and how it works in the book. But again, chapter 7 is where we talk about everything we've seen so far, and now we see how it all works together and why people, when they're not feeling sure first, they get into conversations, and part of that is because they're not even sure about using their own words. The other part is obviously the unpredictability of real communication. So when you get into conversations, even if you learn things, even if you feel sure about your words, you will still often be unprepared for the unpredictability of real communication. But that's another thing you can also prepare for in advance. So hopefully that makes sense. I want to go into a bit more detail about this if people are curious, but that's why I wrote the book. So lots of people are learning English, but it's not actually helping them speak, and so they feel, now I have to go get speaking practice because how else am I going to feel sure about using my words? And that's really what fluency is. It's the ability to use your words without hesitation because you're not unsure about using them. All right, let me just look through a couple of these comments here. This could be a very quick video, but hopefully I can answer anything people have here. DX Sniper says, "How's it going?" It's going all right. Camera is reversed. Yeah, we'll see if I can get that fixed. I don't know what's up with that. Hello, nice class as always, says Vincente. Nice to see you there. Gaber says, "Can you explain the get word meanings in English? Use in a lot of forms, thank you." I made a video all about that. There are actually, I think, a couple of different videos I made. If you just search the channel for Get, that's already done. You can watch that anytime you like. Oh, Tsubasa says, "Ohio Sensei, nice to see you there with the DAP, excuse me. Is that looks like a chef and a DAP and a something else." A character with some little green thing. I don't know if that's a plant or whatever. Amino says, "Hi, teacher," and said, "I get it. I got here. I get." Yeah. So I've covered get or got or any of these versions a lot in videos already. So if you'd like to see that, just search the channel for this. We also cover a lot of this in Fluent for Life, especially like we're contrasting things like get and have and take, and these are also in the visual guide to phrasal verbs because they're so common. But in general, get means I don't even want to go into too much detail about it, but it's like you're transferring from one position to another. So whether that's something moving from someplace else to you, or you moving from someplace to someplace else, like that's essentially what get means. So you can think about it physically and you can think about it figuratively as well. But the other videos on the channel already explain all that in detail. CA5 says, "Is Canadian English and American English is same or different?" Yeah, mostly they're the same. Canadian English is more similar to American English than American English and British English. But yeah, there are some words that are different and the accent is a little bit different, but in general it's the same vocabulary. And again, let's see, Horacio, if I'm pronouncing that, if that's the name. Hi from Spain, nice to see you there. And CA again says, "Hello, sir. Nice to meet you. My name is Sawan. I'm from India, but currently live in Canada. Nice to see you, sir. Nice to see you there." So if anybody has any particular questions about this, like this core idea, it seems like such a small idea. And I wish I could write on the board because I got to write backwards if the video is now playing backwards. And that's crazy. I don't know why it would do that. Let me know if this is backwards. I'm just going to write hello on here. Is that backwards for you all? Are you reading it like the opposite way? Hopefully I don't have to stand on the other side of the camera here. But that's really odd that they would do that. Let me know. Is that backwards for people? Yes or no? Huh. Anyway. Yeah, that's a pain. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. It seems, especially after having, it is backwards, okay. It seems like such an odd thing after having written the book and we finally get to the almost end of it. So there's one chapter left to finish, and that chapter that's probably not going to take very long. But in that chapter, we really get to the core of why people are struggling to speak. And it's really just that they actually thought they didn't have to get fluent as they learned. And it's an interesting thing because as we talked about in last week's video, people are in general preparing for things in advance. But language learning is one of those things where people don't really expect to do that. They expect maybe a little bit of learning, but then it's really on the learner to become a good speaker. And I think that's true to some extent. Like, you obviously can use the language when you get out and speak, but it really should be my job as the teacher to prepare you a lot better than most people do. So if we're going to write this backwards here, we'll draw our arrow moving this way. So most people are like, we're going to put this here. So this is the learning phase or whatever. And there's very little of this happening. And most of this, we'll just put this over here. All of this over here is the speaking phase. All right. So I'm looking at it like reversed over here. So yeah, it's interesting that the thing that most people typically do, they're learning a little bit, but they don't actually expect to become good speakers, and so they have to spend a lot more time trying to speak. But obviously this is a huge problem for people if you don't have time or you don't have anyone to speak with or whatever. But the bigger issue obviously is that you're not really feeling sure about your words. So the problem is not even how much time you spend, but it should look more like this, like you're actually not necessarily spending more time learning, but more of your time is spent here actually trying to understand the language. Not a lot more, mind you. It's not like you have to sacrifice a lot of time, but what most people are doing, if you look at like 3 years of time spending learning, there are only a few small pieces of that where people actually speak. So if you take all those little pieces and put them together, it's not actually a lot of time speaking because most people don't have that kind of time or those opportunities to actually speak. But more people can find time to learn something quite easily. Like you can learn while you're sitting by yourself on a train going to work. It's really easy to do that. You may not have anyone to speak with, but you can learn things and understand the language better by yourself. So you can spend more time doing this, and then when you actually speak, the process becomes a lot easier. But the difference here is that we're not trying to really learn the language as we speak. We shouldn't be getting into the conversation feeling unsure about basic things or which preposition is correct or whatever. That's the stuff that should be handled back here. Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense for people. The basic idea, again, and this is what the book is talking about, is that most people don't actually expect to learn anything that helps them speak while they're learning. And if you think about it, like just imagine that. I mean, does anybody here think that learning is supposed to help you speak? I think if you think about it, most people are just like, I guess not. Like I kind of learned something, I hear some phrases or the teacher says something, but it's really my responsibility to go out and become confident or to actually feel sure about using those things. But in reality, so when people actually are trying to learn, it's much easier than most people think because you don't have to wait for conversations or practice partners or any of that. You can feel sure about your words first and then start speaking. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me go back and see if we had anything. So CA5 says, actually, I speak a little bit English fluently, but sometimes I didn't speak English very well. And I am a student in Toronto. If you don't mind, can you give me a advice and suggestion, please? All right, so this is a perfect example of this. So just looking at this comment, and this is, don't feel bad about this. This is just a common thing I see in almost every comment, so it's okay, it's understandable. But there are grammar errors in this, and as you were typing it, even if you wrote it all quickly, you were probably still hesitating at some point while you were writing that comment. Like thinking, should I say this word or that word? And I'm not talking about pausing to think about what you want to say. I'm talking about actually feeling unsure about using the language in a particular way. So even a native speaker will type a comment and maybe pause to think, is this exactly what I want to say, or am I communicating the idea well? But they're not really thinking about, is this grammar correct? That's typically not something native speakers are doing. But when people watching my videos, or understandably, they're not fluent speakers yet, they don't know a lot, or they still have questions, they're going to be making mistakes in their writing. And so what this proves is that even before you speak, so look, like even we have the speaking phase over here, the learning phase over here, even before you say anything, people are already hesitating and feeling unsure about their words. And that means that the learning itself is not even preparing you to feel sure about writing the language, even before you speak. So there's no pressure while you're writing a comment to yourself. You're not feeling pressure to respond quickly or to think of something clever or creative or trying to keep the conversation going. You're just like, okay, it's almost like the pure learning environment where you know something and either you feel sure about using it or you do not, but there's no pressure from speaking. And so again, that really tells you that this is a problem within the learning itself and not something that happens in speaking. Again, I'll just make this point one more time, that yes, there are additional things like uncertainty or having to deal with other people when you get into conversations. But most of these things, the additional frustration that people feel, it comes from not actually feeling prepared about using the words even before the conversation begins. And if you could fix that, if you felt sure about using your words before you speak, wouldn't that make speaking easier? Wouldn't it? It should, because the opposite is certainly true. Not having certainty about what you want to say makes speaking more difficult. And that's why many of the problems people complain about, like forgetting words or needing to translate other things like that, those are not problems of the conversation itself. They are problems that came from the learning, and they now expose themselves, they express themselves in the conversation. So you can kind of think about two groups of problems here. There are communication problems, and there are problems with the language that also happen during communication. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, just to think of a specific idea, before I say anything, before I even write a comment on a YouTube video, if I'm unsure about whether like I should use this word or that word, that's a problem with me learning. And I should not have to speak to solve that problem. It would be kind of odd if I couldn't learn something and then I had to speak in order to get that problem solved. Don't you think? But almost everybody accepts this as true. But anyway, well, we'll go through and see if anybody has any more questions. But just to give you a straight answer, as far as what I've talked about in all of my videos and what I explain in the book, the thing you have to do if you want to become a good speaker is fix these problems here first before you speak. Then speaking becomes a lot easier. So all the errors that you have in your writing, you shouldn't be making those. If you can write well, then you should be speaking better automatically because you're not thinking about, specific errors or whatever. Obviously, you may still have some additional concerns or questions in conversations, because maybe something unexpected happens. That's part of communication. But even in that case, depending on how you prepare, what I do to teach my learners is I'm basically giving them two things. The first one is I'm trying to help them understand the language so they feel sure about using their own words. That's the idea. The second thing is I want to prepare them for the variety they will experience in real communication. So my advice to you, you can actually prepare for both of these things in advance. You can prepare for the things that you have trouble using, so any kind of grammar errors or things like that. You can feel sure about using that in advance. And you can also prepare for the unpredictability of real communication in advance. All right? So doing the exact same thing, it gives you both of these different points that you need in order to communicate fluently, and that's what I show you how to do in the book. So again, the most important thing is not even a particular method, like what specifically you should do, but the first thing is you should actually demand that lessons help you speak. So when you're looking, whether you learn with me or not, or whether you study by yourself, or it doesn't really matter how you learn, but you should be feeling sure about your words. Again, you never know what other people will say, but you should at least be feeling sure about using your own words as you learn. Because why wouldn't you? Why should you not expect that? Why should you not demand that happen? But most people don't. Most people just expect like this is the way it is, and it's not your fault. It's just everybody. It's like the major assumption of language learning generally. People just assume that, well, teachers are giving you information, but it's your job as a learner to actually learn that. But very few people are getting both of those things before they speak. And because they don't do that, they think, okay, speaking is the only place I can get that, and that's why I have to get speaking practice. So what I talk about in chapter 7 is, in part 3, the purpose of speaking practice is just to use what you know. And of course, you still learn additional things, or you're getting to practice a little bit more when you're in conversations, but most of the work is done as you learn. And that's very convenient because lots of people don't have time or the ability to practice with people, or they feel shy, and understandably so. They feel shy about getting into conversations because in the back of people's minds, even though they don't maybe think about it consciously, they're kind of wondering, why do I have to feel sure about my words after I use them? It's like, how does that work? It seems like the opposite of what you should be doing. Like most things, you prepare for something before you do it. But in language learning, for some reason, it's the opposite. Why? Isn't that interesting? Most people never think about that. And so I had to write a whole book. I didn't want to write a book, but I had to write a book that explains all of this. And now, like, anybody can read that. So if you're wondering, why do you struggle with communication, then this is usually the reason. It's one of those two things. Either you're not for sure about your own vocabulary, or you haven't really done much preparation for communication itself. That's the idea. All right, let's keep moving along here. Get some good questions over here. Please don't make me write anything, because then I got to write it backwards here. Let's see here. All right, Gabber, again, can you explain how Americans use the word get in everyday English? It seems to have a lot of different meanings. Yeah, and again, I give most of those, or not most of them, but many of them, and you will understand the idea if you search the channel for get, and you will see videos about that stuff. If you have anything specifically, I don't know, I'm trying to think. I can't remember because there are a couple of different videos that cover this. But you can see basically, as I mentioned earlier, about the idea of obtaining something. And it can be moving from one place to another, or something else moving from one place to another, but that's what it means. All right, Tsubasa again, Drew the World. Oh, look at the medal, English Fluency Guy. Well, thank you very much. If you guys enjoy the channel, do click the like button and share the videos. Also, you can click on the link below to get the book, so you can get all this explained in kind of very simple, laid out fashion, but it's backwards. It's the opposite of what most people expect from a book like this. But so far, people have really enjoyed it. And for anybody who has the book already, if you have already read chapter 7. I just released it yesterday, but if you already have read it, let me know what you think. All right, CA5 again says, I just gave a Duolingo English test last week, and I got 95 score. If we convert an IELTS, the band is 5.5, so 95 score is good score or not, and I got good score or not, and I got 85 score in speaking. And you have a crying face. I was wondering if that was an alien or something like that. Oh, but it's little teary eyes. Oh no. Again, depending on what your goals are, I know Duolingo offers tests. Whether that makes you feel confident about how you're speaking in the real world is another question, I guess. But for a lot of people, they can take IELTS or other things like that, but they still may not have a good time or a convenient or comfortable time expressing themselves in real communication if they're not actually prepared for the way people regularly speak. And that's why, again, there are these two pieces of the language learning process. The first one is making sure you feel sure about your own words, even before you speak. So whether you never say anything to anyone else, you should, in your own mind, be able to think in English and write in English even before you say anything to anybody else. But the other part of that is being prepared for unpredictability. So you can do that in advance. And the more you do it, the easier conversations become. And after a while, it doesn't matter who you're speaking with because you always have a way of expressing yourself. Just like me, like when I'm speaking in Japanese, it doesn't really matter what I'm talking about. Even if I don't know much about the topic, I can either just explain things with the vocabulary I know, or I can ask questions and get new explanations or whatever. Let's see, ALP says, is this streaming live? Yes, it is live, but if you watch it later, it's not. So there you go. It's two things at the same time. All right, CFI says, thank you so much for advice and suggestions, sir. I really appreciate it. Glad to hear. Mohammed says, how to be a better teacher. The best thing you can do is put the responsibility on yourself to prepare people to speak. That's what you can do. And I think over the course of my teaching career, that's the best advice I've come up with to give people. Because if you do that, if you take 100% responsibility, even if that's not feasible or not actually possible, if you take all the responsibility for the learner to understand and feel prepared, then the learner will do a lot better. But most people don't do that. And so that's why, like, the learner comes to the class, they don't really feel like they can use what they learn, and so they have to go out and start doing it themselves. And that's why the language learning process is so difficult for so many people. The beginning of it, the first step, should be the easiest one. But if you don't feel sure and you're confused and you have questions and then you're wondering, what did the teacher actually teach me? So if you don't feel sure when you learn, then of course you're going to struggle more when you speak. So as a teacher, if you just put that thought in the back of your mind and think, I really need to make sure my learners are prepared, number one, for their own vocabulary. Number two, that they will be ready for other people speaking. That's the whole point of communication. And it's different than, and again, this is another thing I explain in chapter 7, but learning to speak is not like learning to play the piano, precisely because of unpredictability. So it is a skill that you develop through practice, but it's a different kind of practice. That's the preparation that comes before you speak. And so I show you exactly how that works. And if you read through chapter 7, only chapter 7, you will get the whole picture of how this works. Everything else sets up chapter 7 really, but it gives you obviously the way to do all this. But chapter 7 is probably that and chapter 4. Those are my two favorite chapters in the book. All right, Monir says, hi, have a good day. Can you talk more about struggling when speaking? Yeah, so let me know if you have specific questions about that, but this particular video is the idea that people talk about struggling when speaking, when the reality is they're struggling even before they speak. It's just that most people don't have those questions come up while they're sitting by themselves or talking or whatever. But anytime you try to use the language, and that can be thinking or writing, so even before you say anything to someone else, if you have any questions about what you're learning, any uncertainty about words or pronunciation or grammar or any of that, even before you speak, this shows you it's a learning issue and not a speaking issue. There are, again, I'll repeat myself, there are issues specifically for speaking, like unpredictability. We don't know what other people will say, but we can be prepared for that as well, in general. We might not be perfectly prepared, but in general, we can be, excuse me, much better prepared than most people are when they try to speak. So if you're unsure when you speak, the best thing I can highlight for you is this is an issue happening even before you speak, if you think about it. So if you think, okay, I'm trying to think about something in English, or I need to write something, or whatever the issue, or the content, it doesn't really matter. But if you have questions and hesitation and you're worried about things like, what is this? And that's even before you get the pressure of communication, then that means learning is not actually preparing you to use your vocabulary. So again, don't worry about what other people will say or the pressure of conversations. When you learn, you should actually be feeling sure about your words, but most people do not. Isn't that interesting? Most people just accept that that's how language learning should work, but I've spent the past 20 years trying to show people that it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to live this way, All right. Okay, let's see here. Good morning from Vietnam, and Tom says, morning, Drew, and Fam says, I'm halfway through your video about patterns for fluent speech. Enjoy it. If you like that and you don't already have the book, you should get that too. That really explains the whole thing. So all the things that I'm doing in my videos are just basically different examples of the things I talk about in the book. And so because I have over 800 videos on the channel now, it's hard for people to come to the channel and find, what exactly is the purpose of all this, or what is my point in terms of how I teach and how I can help you express yourself. And so that's why I wrote the book. So instead of just having all these different things, which will give you lots of good information or even specific lessons or explaining specific grammar points and things like that, if you read the book, it will actually just show you how to do all this yourself, or we can just do it for you in Fluent for Life. But I'm glad you're watching that, and if you have any questions, let me know. CA5 says, I'm your student since 2017. So you've been watching our videos for that long? I'm hopefully you've been improving this whole time. So I've been making videos here since 2010, I guess. So that's a long time. I'm like an old man in YouTube years. So I wasn't there at the absolute beginning. I was a couple years late, but still. Anyway, so if I could leave you with one idea for learning, for teaching, it's really the same thing. The learning itself should actually make you feel sure about using what you know. Does anyone disagree with that? I'm like, hopefully at least the people on my channel are watching this and thinking like, yeah, that's probably true. And if it's not true, it would be odd if it's not, Like, I've talked about this example before, but if I have a problem with my car and I go to a mechanic, so this is a person who fixes cars, a mechanic, and I go to the mechanic and I say, hey, I have a problem with my car, can you fix it for me? And the mechanic says, sure. And then I go back and I pay the mechanic some money, and then the mechanic gives me back the car, but the car is still broken. And the mechanic says, well, I wasn't really going to fix it. I'm giving you some parts. I'm giving you a manual. You have to learn how to put the car back together yourself. And so I say, well, what did I pay you for exactly? And that's what, for me personally, a lot of learning felt like as I tried learning different languages over the years. And I'm like, why am I here? What exactly is the purpose of learning if it's not helping you speak? What is the purpose of that? You guys can tell me in the comments. but that's why I wrote the book. So I was frustrated with that personally as a learner who couldn't use various things, and I was wondering, okay, why is it seems like an odd thing that you learn something, you can't use it, and then you have to get into this speaking practice where it's often difficult to do, or you don't have time, or whatever. But that's when people typically start having issues with their communication. But the truth is, it's only where they notice those issues. They still have those issues even before they speak. So that's what the book is really getting people to realize. But it takes a whole book to make that point clear. Just because there are so many other things to introduce first about how people learn. But it's like the biggest, it's not your fault idea, where people have been learning in a particular way for so long, they just expect that's how learning is, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's see here. So Diane says, hi, good morning, sir. You are my best English teacher ever. Thank you for sharing your idea to us. You would say sharing the idea with us. We share things with, but very good. It's my pleasure. Yes, here we can really learn how to be fluent in English, says Tom. Tom is the man over there. Gabor again, what English words or phrases do Americans use all the time but almost never explain? What do you mean by that? Like they don't explain what they mean? Or what? Be more specific with your question, please. It's an interesting one, but if you're just looking at particular frequency, the problem with just thinking about frequency of word use in general is that, like you asked about the word get before, and some words do have multiple core meanings, like the word trunk, for example. It can mean, like an elephant nose, which is a trunk, or it can mean a box or the body of a tree. All of those things are trunks. So some things, even if they're commonly used, they can have multiple meanings. Other things do have a core meaning, and then that gets used in a variety of ways. But it can be difficult when you don't have like a good understanding of at least a few of those things. And this is another thing that's important for learning, and I talk about this in the book also, where you don't have to try to learn every word or memorize all the most common phrases or whatever. Those are typical things that people think about when they're learning. But the better way to understand this is, if you think about how children learn a language, over time they're getting exposed to these things, but they're really knowing that vocabulary well because they're getting a lot of varied exposure to the same basic vocabulary. So the point is not that they know so much, it's more how can I replicate that, but in a more strategic way, so I don't have to spend a lot of time, but I can still get the same benefit that natives are getting as they learn. So yeah, depending on the specific phrasing, it's not so much about the words themselves, but getting a lot of review of those, but also hearing how they can be used. Like it's the repetition and the variety together, the naturally varied review. But when they don't feel sure about new uses or things like that, they're still lacking some exposure. And that happens continuously. So even native speakers will still learn new uses of things like get, like a young child wouldn't know like get over something or to get over yourself or whatever. Those are things they learn over time. But a native speaker or a non-native adult English learner can get all those in a structured way and understand them much faster by comparing them. That's the purpose of naturally varied review. All right, let's see. Mona says, when I start speaking, I think in my native language first and then translate in my head. How can I stop translating and think directly in English? Okay, here's another perfect example of what I'm talking about here. So if you look at this comment, it's good English, but the assumption here is that when I start speaking, like the thing that happens is like somehow before speaking it was not an issue, but now it is. And so if you think logically about it, try writing something first. Like try writing in your head, like even without writing on a piece of paper or whatever, but you're writing or just thinking about using the language in general. If you, excuse me, if you think about using the language even before you talk with other people, you probably still have those same errors or those same questions, things like that. So the problem is not the speaking itself, although there are additional problems that happen with speaking, like just feeling pressure from other people, but typically that pressure comes from you not feeling sure about your words before you speak. So of course, imagine if I'm going to, like right now, so I'm here talking in front of a bunch of people live and I don't have a script. I'm just answering questions. I don't even know what people are going to ask me. But I don't feel nervous because I'm prepared. I know, like I've spent many years doing this. I'm well prepared. I understand exactly what's going on and I know how to answer people's questions and give them fluency triggers and help them understand the language well. So I don't feel nervous. But if I had to go give a presentation in a biology class today, a teacher just said, "Hey, Drew, can you come teach my class?" for some reason. Just imagine that happened. Then students would be asking me questions like, "Hey, how does this biological thing work?" And I would say, "I don't know." I would feel nervous in that situation because I'm not prepared first. And most learners are not prepared even before they speak. That's the theme of this video. It's the theme of my book. It's the theme of really everything that I teach. But the basic idea again and again and again is people assume, I'm going to draw this again here. So here's we're going to draw another line. So this is before you get into a conversation and then after you get into a conversation. So this is, we'll put a C here for like the conversation starts. And so what most learners think, just like that, man, I've still got a cold or a sore throat from last week. I gotta stretch my voice here. So people think when I get into a conversation, this is where the trouble starts. I'm gonna try to write the word trouble, Trouble. Trouble. Look at that, I wrote it backwards. All right, so the trouble begins when they start speaking. The whole point of this video and the book and really everything else I do is saying that the trouble actually began over here before you said anything. So when people say to me, "Drew, I get stuck in conversations," what I remind them of is, hey, you're actually getting stuck over here first. It's because you're actually not prepared. You don't know the vocabulary well enough. And so you think, okay, I have to get into conversations and try to feel sure about my words there. And that's crazy. It actually is like a really horrible thing to make learners do. And learning a language is, I can't really think of anything else where you have to do this, where you don't prepare thoroughly beforehand and you just start doing the thing. Can you think of anything else where people do that? I can't really think of anything. Maybe there is. But in general, people prepare before they do the thing. It's just in language learning, people get very little preparation. Even if they spend a lot of time learning, they don't actually feel prepared. And so that's the whole point of this video, like, what is the purpose of language learning? The specific learning part. If you're not feeling sure about your words, what is the point? What are you supposed to be doing there? Because people don't really have a good answer for that when you ask them. So even right now, if you have a good answer for that, let me know. But usually it's things like, well, you get a little bit of exposure, you learn some rules or whatever, but I just respond with, if you don't feel sure about using it, then what did you learn? It's like if I teach you something, but then you can't perform it at all, then that's my fault as a teacher for not making that clear for you. So again, the problem is not beginning here. The problem just mostly becomes noticeable over here. That's the difference. So you still have the problem here before you speak, but you don't notice it, or you don't think about it, or you just ignore it while you're reading or writing or whatever. So if you're reading a book and you don't know what a word means, or you can't understand something, whatever, that's a pre-speaking problem before speaking even happens. Because there's no pressure here from anybody else. You don't have to respond. You don't have to do anything else. Those are problems that do happen when you're in conversations. But even then, if you actually are prepared first, the communication part is much easier because you don't feel any pressure. Just like I don't feel any pressure right now to talk. This is the most natural thing I can do, just explaining people like the things that I know about. And everybody does that. If you watch a young child talk about something they like my daughters enjoy collecting stickers, and so they spend time talking about stickers with each other, and that's great. But if I said, hey, can you teach me how to fix a television, they would not know how to deal with that. It's not their fault that they don't know that. They just haven't learned how to do it. And so in language learning, it's just like a super odd thing that nobody thinks about that. But as my book is nearly complete, and even you don't have to read the whole book, you could read just chapter 7 and get this whole idea. But my goal is to actually change the way people learn languages by making this point clear. The problem is not with speaking, it's before speaking even happens. And that means you should be able to fix it before you speak. And so if more people did that, they would actually feel prepared for communication. But the first step is kind of demanding, especially if you're learning from somebody else, that they should be helping you speak. They should be making you feel sure about the words as you learn them. It shouldn't be something you have to wait for, and then hopefully you get it maybe at some point in the future. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. And sir, my name is Sawan, not Sia. Yes, okay. Yeah, I figured that was not your actual name. But I remember, yes, Sawan. All right, DX Sniper, and I know that's not, DX Sniper is probably not his actual name or her actual name either. All right, this is true. If you don't feel confident, you don't get into any conversations with people. People can't fix your mistakes forever. Yeah, and so again, you can learn things in conversations, and I'm not saying don't speak. Of course, I want you to speak. I want you to get out. But first, as a teacher, I know that if you try to speak before you feel ready, you will struggle with that. And it will make you hate language learning, like it has for many, many people for, I don't know, however long people have been trying to learn languages in typical classes. But that's the reality for most people. It doesn't have to be, but that's what's going on. All right, let's see. We got, and pardon me, this is all one word here, but it's like pankawi, if that's one thing. But when I'm trying to study deeply by getting more examples for individual words, I'm trying to get fluent, and it takes more effort than just listening, not actively putting in any extra effort. Well, I mean, it depends. Like, it also depends on how you're learning and trying to get the examples. The point is not like no effort. Because if you think about playing a video game, like you're actually pushing buttons and doing things and you're going through the process, the effort is not the problem. It's just whether it's boring or whether you're not actually enjoying the process. So I'm not trying to say you won't do any work. It's just the work you do should be enjoyable. And most people enjoy playing games and solving mysteries and doing puzzles and things like that. Like you've probably seen these Sudoku puzzles. So you have this grid of numbers over here, and you have to fit, the numbers 1 through 9 in each one of these rows. And people will just sit for hours doing these things. And it's work. You're doing work. But it's enjoyable for people, just like it's enjoyable for people to read a mystery novel or something like that. And so think about that as you learn. Like for me, if I want to go deeper into something and learn more about it, I should probably pick something I actually like or want to know about. If I don't care like about stickers, for example, maybe I shouldn't focus on that. But if you're naturally interested in doing things and you can do that in English, why not? Because it would be a lot easier to do it and you'll make a lot more progress. So yeah, like passively sitting and listening to things can certainly help you. And even right now, you're not speaking with me. I'm trying to help people understand. Like today's video is not so much about specific grammar points or vocabulary. It's just understanding this very basic idea that learning should actually prepare you to speak. It should. Isn't that weird? Like if you ask most people, hey, should learning prepare you to speak? And they'll probably say, yes. They will not give you a straight answer for that because the ability to speak proves whether the lessons are actually being helpful or not. So again, like the purpose is not like whether effort is used as you learn. It's just, is the effort rewarding you with better speaking or not? And sometimes you will do something like it's more effort to try to write something than it is to just watch. But will that help you feel more sure about using something? It probably will. So it just depends on the kinds of things you're learning and what you're interested in. So Gabber, let's see. A Mane says, hi, master. And Gabor again says, Americans often say things like, I'll get back to you, or I'm good. What do these actually mean in real life? All right, when you see people use those, just like I explain in the book, try to connect the words with the situation. If I'm talking with someone on the phone and I say, hey, how do you do this? Or can you tell me the answer to this thing? Or they're asking me for some kind of request, but I can't fulfill that now, so I can't help them immediately. I'll say, okay, let me find out and I will get back to you about that. So in that situation, what do you think is happening? If you just look at the vocabulary by itself, it's a lot more difficult. But if you look at it within that situation, why somebody is saying like, hey, I'll get back to you or I'll get back with a particular thing. Okay? So if you explain that to people and you see people actually in situations like that, and this is another thing I describe in the book. So instead of just looking at like, here's a random list of some vocabulary or whatever, which is usually forgettable, you should think about learning from particular situations, like getting a bunch of people or a bunch of examples of people in an office talking about something like that. Like here is, my example of trying to feel, I don't know, whatever. Like let's say I'm frustrated with something. And so you can see me feeling frustrated and expressing, I'm like, fuck, or like shit, or damn, or I'm cursing like that. And you can see I'm using those words as expressions of frustration. You can see it by connecting my face and my expression with the vocabulary I'm using. And it's the same thing with everything else in life. That's how kids learn from their parents, or they watch what other kids do. I remember my younger daughter, Noelle, so we were watching just a clip, so a short video on YouTube of, it was like a Family Guy episode, so just a section of one of those. And the dog character, Brian, he was on the phone and he says, damn it! And my daughter really loved that word. So we're kind of teaching her some bad language. She's only 7 years old now, but she enjoyed that. And she connected the frustration of that situation with that. And I asked her, I said, do you think that's like a good word or a bad word, But she got the idea, because from those particular situations. So rather than me just telling you, hey, this means this, if you see people in those situations and try to not think about it logically, like what the word get means, you're kind of getting it from the opposite. This is what I talk about in detail in chapter 6. So you will learn things like that, and I show you how to learn them. Ruslan says, hello, sir. I finished advanced level, but why I switched language just in a few days? I finished advanced level, but why I switched language just in a few days? What do you mean? Are you talking about advanced level of what? Mohammed says, teaching grammar can sometimes be dry for young learners. Could you share some creative ways to introduce complex grammar rules to kids without relying on traditional rote memorization? Is that a quote? Did you copy that from somewhere? If your question is about that, two things. Number one, you should watch my beginning grammar playlist on YouTube. It goes from like super basic, absolute beginner to what do we have? Like later levels of I don't know, like modal verbs. I don't know, like prepositions of many different things. But there's 19 different videos in that series, and it shows you how to teach those things all in English. So you're getting to learn it from context. You could even just show those videos to learners and have them learn that way. The other way is to give them Frederick, which is my app, and you can click on the link in the description below that, and that also lets them learn grammar automatically, all in English. Thank again. Everyone can become fluent in their first language, but not everyone can be a good speaker in front of a camera or class. What do you think about that? Sure. I mean, even some people don't become good speakers of their first language either. You know, that happens for whatever reason. Maybe people in general become speakers of the language, but what most people forget is that a lot of that time is just spent listening and collecting understanding before they try to speak. That's what happens to most people. But yes, there are lots of native English speakers or native speakers of every language who are not comfortable speaking in public. But again, that same thing, and I talk about this also in the book, where I'm explaining to people that speaking in front of others, especially if you're doing it professionally, like for your work, even if you're not doing public speaking in front of a crowd of people, it's a really frustrating thing for many people, because if you say something wrong or whatever, even if the language is correct, you could make a mistake doing something. There was actually an example I wanted to put in the book, but I did not. But this is an old, there was a TV network, actually, I think it was, I guess, Sports Center. Maybe that was, I think it was on ESPN. Anyway, they had a series of commercials that were kind of funny. You can find this commercial. I don't know the name of it, but it was a guy who was talking about sports. So you have a group of guys sitting around playing cards, and they're talking about sports. And one guy says something that it just showed he was kind of ignorant about some players, and the other guys start laughing at him. And so the idea is that even though they are all native English speakers, he just didn't know enough about the thing to be talking about it. So it can be an exposing and embarrassing thing even for native speakers of a language. So it's even worse, it's even more frightening for a lot of people trying to speak a new language when you don't even have the basic grammar correct. So, all the more reason to prepare in advance, which you can do anytime by yourself without waiting for other speakers or conversations or anything. You don't even need a personal teacher to do this. You just need to, like I show in the book, get lots of strategic exposure, not just random videos, but strategic exposure to things that answer your questions. And that way you will feel sure about your words before you speak. So the book is not trying to make everybody a professional speaker. It's just showing you that you can actually feel sure about using your words and have good conversations. But all of that is really coming from the preparation before you speak. All right, and Ruslan again, and he's gone in a few days and I can't feel it. Okay, I don't know what that's all referring to. Let me know. Mohammed again, with the current TikTok generation, students' attention spans are getting shorter. What are your go-to strategies to keep a 14-year-old student engaged and motivated through a 60-minute lesson? Yeah, the same thing I just talked about. I think maybe you're getting these from ChatGPT or something. But yeah, read the book. Honestly, it will show you exactly how to do that. Juan Carlos says, although age is out of the track, I'm completely lost around here. Any advice to stay motivated? I am too lazy to stay focused. get the book. Just read the book. Remember, what people think of as a focus problem is just, I'm studying things I don't like and I don't understand them. So of course you're losing focus. But if you look at the things that you do focus on, you probably can read books that you're interested in, or you watch movies, or you play video games, or you talk with your friends. The things that you don't need to stay motivated to do, use that same stuff to learn languages. And that's the same thing I do as a teacher. Like, I know people are not going to be interested in studying grammar. They just want to be able to speak well. So if I can show them how grammar works without spending a lot of time explaining grammar rules, then they will actually not have a motivation or, like a problem about feeling lazy. They will just enjoy what they're learning and make progress. So you don't have most of the issues that people think, like they get into conversations or they're trying to learn things. They think it's a motivation problem or a talent problem or time, or I just don't know enough vocabulary yet for all the things that happen here. But the truth is, you just don't feel sure about your words even before you speak. And you can actually learn in a way that's entertaining and fun for you. It is possible to do that. And so this is exactly how native speakers and you, like even in your native language, are getting fluent. Let's see. Rash. And I don't know. I wish YouTube would not do this with these handles over here. Where are you from? I'm from the United States. Bridget, nice to see you there. And the sniper again today. I was practicing to be confident how to use enlighten and insight. It took about 2 hours, and I found that fruitful. Very cool. Very nice. And sometimes you can spend time getting examples of things, and it's not wasted effort, especially if you get to the point where you feel sure about using it. That's really the idea. Sometimes it comes quickly and easily. Other times you might need a few examples. Really, my job as a teacher is to make even the things that that would seem tricky show you how to get those correct examples faster. That's really the benefit of using something like Fluent for Life, because I already know how most of these things work. Ildar, nice to see you there. How's it going? What's going on, Drew? Bridget again, could we gather language tools, but the brain is not ready? I don't know, not ready for what? What do you mean? Because in general, you're probably learning things in your native language all the time, and there's no being ready for it. You don't need language learning, like specific tools to learn new things. It's just getting exposure in a strategic way. So this is not just getting random input where you feel like you understand something, but you can't use it. We really want to get to the point where we can use something. And you should be able to do that as you learn. So even before you speak, you should feel sure about using your words. Jesus says, or maybe Jesus, my main problem is when I'm trying to watch a movie without subtitles, but I keep trying. Yeah, don't feel bad about using subtitles. What you should do is, and this is often it's part of the preparation gap where your level is down here, but you're interested in watching content up here. And I understand that. You're just starting to learn a language, or even if you know a little bit, you don't want to watch, some kids show that you don't care about. You want to watch a movie that you're actually interested in. So don't feel bad about that. If you need to use subtitles, it's better to use subtitles in English. But, if you're just going to watch it, sometimes you're just watching content because you want to watch it. Like if I watch a movie in Korean, I don't know any Korean at all, I'm not going to feel bad about watching the movie in Korean with English subtitles at the bottom. I don't care. It's not a big deal. And even if I'm in, doing something in Japanese, even Japanese people will still have the writing in Japanese at the bottom just to make sure people know what's happening or what characters they're using or whatever. There's a lot of writing on Japanese TV, actually. But yeah, don't feel bad about that. The problem is not subtitles, it's just more making sure you do get good examples of things that help you understand the language. So don't worry about subtitles. Do you have a book? Great live. Glad to hear it, says Pablo. Yes, you can click on the link in the description below this video. It is called The Strangest Fluency Secret, and I've been writing it and releasing chapters one by one to learners, and so I have one chapter left, but the most important one, I think, is chapter 7. So that's the one I just released, and that really puts everything together. So if you only read one chapter of the book, please read that one. Hopefully you enjoy the whole book, but it's not that long. I think even right now it's like 130 pages or something. So it's not a long book, but there's a lot of information in there that will help you speak better today if you implement it. All right. Oh, Mike, nice to see you there. How are y'all doing? Hi, Drew. Good to see you. There's a book called Dangerous English by Urban Dictionary. I'd recommend it. Look at that. Dangerous English. That's interesting. Urban Dictionary publishing its own stuff. When you say, I'll get back to you, does that usually mean yes or no? So that's a cultural question there, not a language question. And so it depends. Like sometimes, actually, I just saw this in an example of a video yesterday where someone was being interviewed for a job, and the guy said, like, we'll get back to you, and kind of part of that is their expression and intonation and how they're saying it. Like, oh yeah, we'll get back to you tomorrow. If we're sure, like, we will definitely connect with you about a particular thing, then it definitely gets done. But sometimes they don't actually get back to you. But that doesn't remove the meaning, the core meaning, the actual meaning of the grammar, which is to respond to somebody at some point. So you're not doing it now, but I will get back to you. I will reconnect with you at some point. So that's the idea, even if people don't actually commit to doing that all the time. Mohammed says, when is the best time to correct a student? Immediately or at the end of an activity? I usually and I don't, since I don't have like private lessons anymore, I just do this with my own kids, but I will repeat back to them. Like my daughter today, my older daughter said, like she used a grammar, what was that? I think she said, like, I stick it on the door. She was maybe talking about a sticker or something like that. Oh no, she was talking about, she found a four-leaf clover. And I said, oh, did you save it? Did you put it somewhere? For people who don't know, this is kind of considered lucky. A lot of clovers just have 3 sets of leaves on it. So if you find a 4-leaf clover, she just found that at school. And she said, yeah, I stick it in my book. And I said, oh, you stuck it in your book? And she said, yeah, I stuck it in my book. And so there I'm repeating back to her what she said, but with the correct phrasing. So I don't need to like stop the conversation and make a big deal out of it. I'm just giving them the correct example so that they will understand. So typically I do things right when it happens, and that's part of the function of having an actual teacher there. So if you can do that. Let's see, Russell, again, I finished advanced level English and I can't speak properly. What advanced level English where? What do you mean? Like you took a course or something? What does that mean, advanced level English, and I can't speak properly? But yes, like it's not surprising that people would take courses but still not be able to speak. Like if you are taking a program, it doesn't matter if advanced or whatever, if you don't feel sure about using your words as you're doing that, and you don't ask questions and make sure you get those questions answered, then of course a lot of people are not going to be becoming good speakers at the end of that. People will certainly have courses like that though. And again, that's the whole point of this video and the point of my book and everything I do is making that same point where people are often not sure about the things they want to say because learning they don't expect will be actually helping them speak. So it's like people are in a cult in a weird way. You know what a cult is? I'll put this up here, C-U-L-T. I'm glad I'm writing some easy words over here, a cult. So a cult, it's kind of people who like believe something that isn't true, but they feel stuck in that. And so this is a thing where this is not even me trying to make teachers feel bad about this either. This is just everybody is mostly in this cult, kind of like way of thinking about language learning, where you don't actually learn to speak when you learn. You should, but you don't. And people don't expect that. They do expect to get into conversations and then try to improve their speaking there. So that's the belief system that almost everybody has about learning. But if you can break that, then you realize, oh, it's a lot easier just to prepare first. Okay. Let's see, again, there's another one of those long handles there. If anyone doesn't or never master fundamental, doesn't understand English, which are nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, etc. If anyone doesn't or never master fundamental, doesn't understand English. Sure, like you should, yes, if you don't know the basics of something, it's probably going to be more difficult for you to understand more difficult things and communicate. Sergey says, learn phrases and expressions instead of learning individual words. Learn whole phrases and expressions. This will help you speak more naturally. Yeah, again, I don't even worry about getting the kind of method conversation about where specifically you should focus on. I talk about that in the book. Sometimes there are words that you want to learn, but the point is more getting them like in contextual examples or seeing a lot of variety until you understand how they're learned, or excuse me, how they work. So if you're unsure about using something, it's okay to learn a particular word or something like that. And often learning words teaches you phrases naturally. So I don't even really worry about that. But yes, like learning phrases is certainly going to help you speak. Got a nice four-leaf clover from Mike. Mohammed says, thank you very much. And Gabber says, let's try and don't ask questions. It's a trial. Let him teach us. I don't understand what you're... let him try what? What should I be doing here? So it looks like we're at the end of the question set here. If people still have questions, let me know. But I have 800 or over 800 videos now on the channel because I know what I'm doing, and depending on what you're interested in learning, you can certainly get that. And you can even take that to a higher level, and by higher level, I just mean more attention from me actually showing you exactly how stuff works. Most of what I do on the YouTube channel is giving you examples that it is possible to feel sure about your words before you speak. So whenever you feel that moment like, I get it. Now I actually understand how I can use something, then you can start using it. And that's how you should be doing it, nice and comfortably and easily and quickly. And that's how you can become a good speaker very fast, because you don't have to spend time waiting for people to practice speaking with. So if you'd like to learn how to do that, definitely get the book. You can click on the link in the description below the video to get that. And also Fluent for Life. That's for people who especially have read the book, but they actually want me to do all the work for them. So it certainly is possible for you to find the information and teach yourself. But just like for me, it would be, even still now, I'm basically teaching myself Japanese. I don't have a Japanese teacher. I just have to get the input that I feel I need when I need it. All right, last question here. If mastering parts of speech, I can make every sentence I want instantly and understand every sentence written or spoken without issues, or after mastering parts of speech. Yeah, it's great. If you feel sure about using your words, that's the goal. There you go. So then the next issue is preparing for the unpredictability of real communication. Let's see. How can you be this funny answering our questions? I don't know. I didn't realize I was doing anything funny or whatever. You are better than me. What I don't understand. What are you talking about? There should be no comma in there. That's the only thing maybe better in this example. There should be a capital Y on the U. And then no comma in there either. The problem is we just want the lazy way to speak without practice. To speak without practice. Well, like I'm lazy when I learn. I hopefully people don't think I'm trying to give them a more difficult way to learn, because for me it seems like the more difficult way is what most people do. So they spend like a little bit of time learning, and they don't really have fun because they don't understand things. And then they spend a lot of time either waiting for conversations or trying to speak, but they don't actually improve very much. And so they're spending years doing this, years. And for me, that doesn't sound fun at all. It doesn't sound easy. It doesn't sound relaxing. It doesn't sound even like the lazy way to do it. The lazy way to do it is to like join a program like Fluent for Life and let me just get you fluent by helping you understand the language well. That's the laziest thing you can do. But I mean, you can certainly just watch a lot of random content, and some of it, if you structure it well, it should be giving you good exposure to the language that answers your questions. But until you get your questions answered, that's when you're going to continue to struggle. So that's how that works. But hopefully that makes sense. All right. But remember, it's not about trying to be lazy about it. It's like if you actually want to be lazy, you know, most people like, you know, I'm too lazy to watch a movie or something, like, you know, like I'm too lazy to breathe or something. You know, how lazy, I don't know how lazy people are, but in general, if you look at somebody's life, they're probably doing some things and putting a lot of energy and time and money into things they enjoy doing. Like if you really enjoy cooking, you will want to go, like, you know, do the particular thing, you know, that you're trying to do. You will spend time doing the things that you're interested in. But like the things that you don't want to do, then you're lazy to do that because, of course, you don't care. But language learning doesn't have to be that way because you can learn about anything you like. So you just take the things you're interested in, plus language you can understand, and you just learn the things that you're learning within that. It's pretty easy. That's like how I learned gardening here in Japan. So I was already interested in gardening, came to Japan, learned about gardening in Japanese, and learned a lot of Japanese that way. Pretty easy. All right, let's see. So Mike says, I'm doing an app to learn the Laxey's way. I'd like y'all to try it out further ahead when I finish. Like a relaxed way? Is that what you mean? You are better than equals preposition me or you. Then correct, I am both. Wait, is that a question? Oh, you're explaining that to me? You would say you are a native speaker. You are a native speaker. And I'm not sure how to use actually. That's another good question. Again, I made a video about ChatGPT. I recommend you watch that video. The book also has an updated prompt for ChatGPT in it to help you understand specific words and learn them much faster. But rather than going through specific examples of things that I've already covered, like the word get, so it's pretty easy. So the lazy thing to do is to ask questions of things that are already answered in other videos. So the actual slight effort would be to go to the channel, type GET, and then watch the videos that you see. That would be not the laziest thing you could do, but it'd be pretty easy. It'd be pretty easy to do. So what does the get word means? Watch those videos. I've already answered those questions. I don't know why you're continuing to ask me about that. Anyway, it looks like that's the end of questions anyway, but remember, all of this stuff is already done. It's very easy to go, like, you know, people often wait for live videos when a lot of questions are already answered. But again, the point here is that you should be actually understanding the language well before you speak. And if you can do that, then speaking itself becomes a lot easier. Wouldn't you like to feel prepared before you speak? Would anyone not like to do that? I'm curious. You can let me know. Would anyone not like to feel sure before speaking? Or want to feel unprepared? Because maybe some people do. Maybe some people like the challenge of getting into a conversation and not actually feeling sure about using their words. Maybe. But if you're looking for the lazy or the easier way to do things, preparing first, and it's not like you're sacrificing a lot. It's very easy. This is much easier than what most people do typically to learn because they don't actually get a reward for all the time they spend learning. So it's easy to do it. All right. Let's see. DX Sniper says, therefore, I regret not finding your channel before. As they said, it's better late than never. Yep. Well, the second best time to do things is always right now. That's another good expression for you. The second best time to do things is right now. So for anybody out there, if you do not have the book already, click on the link in the description below if you'd like to learn how to do this, or you can do the laziest thing of all, which is nothing. There you go. For the people who really like to be very lazy, don't do anything. You just sit there. Don't even click off of this video. YouTube will just continue to feed you new videos. You don't have to do anything. It may not help you, do whatever it is you're doing, but it will help YouTube, I guess. All right. And then we got a last good morning, everyone over there. But have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining me. I'll hopefully get these YouTube video, things sorted next time. But enjoy. Do read the book if you are curious about how to learn and you really would like to feel sure about using your words before you speak, because it is possible and you should expect learning to do that. If you don't expect learning to do that, then you will struggle most likely when you get into conversations. All right, have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.